Welcome, everyone. Great to see some of you tuned in already. Welcome to week 6 of New Zealand, Real Women NZ. We have a treat for you tonight. I have Bronnie and ASEAN, as well as Katrina, in the waiting room in the studio. They'll be joining us shortly. Just before I bring them in, I wanted to start with a wee clip. It's only about a 2-minute clip, but as people are arriving, I'm going to play that and then I'll bring the ladies in tonight and we'll discuss what our topic is. So if you just bear with me a moment, I'm going to share my screen and somehow, we present, won't be a moment, I'm going to present this. Hold on, let's see if I can get it to work. Full screen, oops. Technology is not one of my favorite things, but it's happening. Technology, share screen, coming. All right, here we go. Here we go. That one. Okay. So click on that, and here we go.
Where a group of high school girls is facing backlash for daring to speak out against a biological male using their locker room.
The school system is failing the volleyball girls. They are putting the trans students' needs above ours because it is one person against the 14 other on the team.
I sat down with some of these girls, and they tell me that they bear no ill will towards this trans-identifying student. But they don't understand why they have to share a locker room with a biological male, and they're frustrated that school officials seemingly have no interest in their side of the story.
It's not fully the trans students' fault. It is much more the school board's fault, and they're failing everyone, not just the volleyball team, not the transgender student. They just want people to be in trouble, and they're not trying to help make a change.
Bunch of tough, resilient young girls that want to see change, and they are uncomfortable, and they're just Vermont girls.
A male was in our locker room when volleyball girls were trying to get changed. After I asked him to leave, he didn't, and later looked over at girls with their shirts off, and it made many people uncomfortable and feel violated. I left as soon as I could in a panic.
I was the first one inside the locker room at the time, and the trans student came in and walked into a separate part of the locker room and went and changed while the other girls were in the main part of the locker room changing as well. As soon as the trans-identifying student was done changing, they came out and stood at the entrance of the locker room for a little bit. A lot of the girls were changing in their sports bras and stuff. Like, can you please get out? We're changing. We don't feel comfortable with you in here. After a little while, the student did leave, but it took a little bit for the student to leave, and a lot of us were not comfortable with that situation, and it's happened before, and so we want it just to be changed, really.
In a locker room, it's made specifically for girls, and so having a male with a penis in there, it just felt wrong.
When you tried to talk to your school officials about what happened, what did they say?
When I tried to talk to them, they just shut me down and said it was a law.
Hello. You're on mute, Stella.
You're muted. Good evening, everybody. Really nice to see the whole team back. Hello, hello, Katrina. Great to have you back on the panel tonight. How are you all?
Yeah, I'm good.
Thanks,
okay. My apologies, ladies. That was a fail of the mute. So it is great to see you all. Welcome back, ASEAN and Bronnie. Great to see you here this week. It's good that I'm not on my own. And Katrina is here for tonight and next week. So really good to have you back, Katrina. So before we kick off into our topic tonight, I want to get your opinion shortly about what you just saw. Now that to me is if you really take notice or took notice of what was said by those girls, that's actually quite emotive. I know it affects me because what I'm thinking about is the fact that here we are as adults and we're discussing this stuff, but there you have young girls who are having to fight this, and this is why we need to be in this space for them. I think it's appalling, especially that last comment, go somewhere else if they feel uncomfortable. What do you ladies think about that? Maybe Katrina, would you like to start before we talk about the our situation in the pools here?
Sure. Look, what jumped out at me was this, the fact that they said they had no interest in this side of the story whatsoever. And we have just experienced that ourselves every year.
Yeah. Other like Bronnie, would you like to make a comment about it?
Yes, I just think that there's a gross negligence on behalf of the board in protecting not just the physical safety of the girls, but also the emotional safety. This is something that seems to be totally irrelevant to these so-called decision makers. It's all about the emotional safety or security of this one person who chooses, who clearly has gender confusion issues and needs some proper help, rather than just pushing that whole situation onto a bunch of girls who are quite clear that they don't want to have to share their change room with a biological man.
Yeah, and you made a good point, because as that clip goes on further, the girls go on to say how they don't blame the transgender student. They actually blame the school board for not putting in place really good policy.
Yeah.
So that's great that you highlighted that. We could play it, but I'm sure people can go and find that one themselves. But if there is time, we can play more of it. However, we have a lot to discuss as well. So thanks, Bronnie. What about you, Azian? Did you anything you feel like? Yeah.
I think it's the ultimate misogyny, right? Here we are having women and girls, saying they're feeling uncomfortable, and yet the man, well, who identifies as a woman, their feelings and their needs are being put higher than all the girls in that room, and that the board is taking that really, actually, I think it's sexist, because that male's feelings are more important than a whole group of women's feelings, and that the board is taking that stance is really disappointing. It must be horrifying for these girls, because they're obviously not being heard. They don't have a voice, and it's really good that they're speaking out publicly.
Yeah, I think we'll come back to that a little bit later. I'm just looking at the comments. Nicole has said, hi, everyone. Good to be here. Welcome, Nicole. It's great to have you here again. It's really good that I'm noticing we're seeing some familiar faces coming back every week, and it's really good to have you here. Nicole also said, this is just so wrong. She's welcomed you back, Azian. Rhonda jumped on and said, lovely to see all of you together again. Thank you. Katrina, did you hear that? Sharon Marie said, hello, my first time here. Glad I found you, ladies. Welcome, Sharon. Nice to have you here. And Cherie has said, good evening all. Charmaine, the indulging the man. Yeah, good point. Okay, so tonight, we'll just briefly, for those who actually are not aware, tonight we are discussing a similar thing to what I just shared, and that's why I shared the clip. So myself and a few other women were in a meeting with Christchurch City Council, I think it was last year, but Katrina can fill us in a bit more about that. And we discussed with the council their recent inclusion of adults with male anatomy into private spaces for women. So I'll but I'm pretty sure that Katrina can talk more around that. So Katrina, would you like to start us off?
Sure. First of all, I seem to have a sort of a delay, echoey thing going. So if I sound a bit strange, that'll be why. First of all, Mia was going to be here from Invercargill, but she couldn't make it, unfortunately. The situation there is that you may have seen that on the news, is that they had a meeting with the council staff, and over 100 people arrived here, and it was quite rambunctious. I think they were going to have a meeting with the mayor, and he's pulled out of it. He probably got advice to pull out of it. So anyway, our sexual reform is that in October 2021, the Christchurch City Council opened the Linwood, and they had a weekly women's session. And this was instigated after wide consultation with the community, but they did not consult the fact that they were going to include men who say they were women in this session. So that came as a surprise to a lot of people on the opening day. Now, Helen and I and a few other women had a meeting with the Christchurch City Council and discussed this, and they wouldn't have a bar changing anything, not at all. So what's come across to us is that it doesn't matter what sort of place you present to them, how good it is, they are entrenched in this ideology. Sorry about this. This is really weird. I'm saying something and hearing it a couple of seconds later. Maybe I should go out and come back in again and see if it
actually doesn't sound too bad, Katrina, but maybe when there's somebody else having a talk, we can, if you pop out in and out again, but we can hear you. Okay. Maybe getting closer to the microphone might help as well. Actually, what you could do, Katrina, if you want to pop in and out, and I'll address the questions that have come through or the comments. Would you like to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have Nicole. Sorry, is it Nicole? Hold on a minute. Where are we? Nicole has said, let's not forget the male's feelings are more important than the female's safety. Well, in these situations, it would seem so, Nicole. Sharon has said, thank you. Valerie, where are you, Valerie? My own morbid curiosity keeps me coming back. Well, whatever keeps you coming back, we're glad you're here. Okay, and what do we got? We have Danielle, who's, when I was a young girl, 10 years old, a man exposed himself to me and was masturbating. I was transfixed and petrified that police were called and he was caught. Now remember when this was a crime. I will never forget that. Okay, thanks for sharing that, Danielle, because these things, like some people might think, oh my gosh, you can't talk about masturbating or whatever. But the thing is, our children are being exposed to some of this stuff. And unless we, as mature adults, responsible, open these conversations and actually have them, we're not going to be able to protect and address the situations which are unfolding. And this is part of the problem with some of these extreme radical gender people who are wanting to silence us. So we appreciate your comment, Danielle. I'm sure that there's many other women out there who can share similar stories of childhood stuff that has led them to now, even as adults years later, have concerns, which is why we're talking about this. And Bronnie will touch a little bit on that later around trauma and some women. So now that we've got, there's a couple, actually I'll just show this one. Carol, we have to rise up en masse, we have to speak up en masse, we have to come together and roar that we won't roll over. And look, Carol, this is part of it. This is where we're starting right here, and we are going to grow and do exactly what you have suggested. Gillian, young girls, especially teenagers, have to start speaking out. I agree, Gillian, but why should the young girls have to be speaking out? We as adults need to actually be the ones to protect them and stand up for them. Our children should not have to be standing up and speaking out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I fully agree with that, Helen. That's why we're here. We are the mothers, and we're protecting them, because they shouldn't have to. They should just we should just be acknowledging that they feel uncomfortable. They shouldn't have to go out there and speak out. This should be the adults making sure that these girls are safe.
Absolutely. And that's what we plan to do, ASEAN. We're going to make sure that there's some laws that we have around child protection, because there is not enough law around child protection in many areas. Carol said this happened. Yep. Thanks, Jenna.
So right in that we do need some, perhaps older teenagers standing up and speaking out as well, because we already know that this is happening in the colleges. That they're changing the toilets to, unisex whatevers, and there's some pretty nasty stuff going on in the schools, which we're not hearing about. It's the whole thing is totally traumatizing for young women, young girls, to be exposed to male anatomy, if that's totally inappropriate. It was classed as sexual abuse not so long ago, and it needs to be put out there front and center that is exactly what's the issue is.
Exposing. The council, of course, has a, as I was saying before we sort of went live, that they're canny old warriors. They are well used to deflecting objections about anything that they don't want to deal with. And to them, they have started redefining words, like, for example, the word woman, redefined it now, so that it is now anyone, I think that's the very words, anyone who identifies as a woman is one, anyone. So that means that if you see a man in the women's changing room who says he's a woman, there is no offence there, unless he actually physically assaults somebody. And that's the only time, basically, an offence will happen.
Well, exposure is physical assault.
Not the council have changed it. They've changed it. If they say that man is a woman, then and he gets naked in amongst a woman, he's not exposing himself as a man. He's only exposing himself as a woman. This is how they're doing things. This is how they are
running roughshod over women.
Exactly, and destroying all the rights that we have. This is how they're doing it.
Yeah, look, Jill's comment was a good one. And the thing is, I'm just making sure that we're well aware as adult women that we are the ones who need to be protecting them. And what you've said, Bronnie, is highly important as well. So not next week, but the week after, I'm interviewing some students, and not about this, but around Pride stuff. And so we will be hearing from student voices, which is really important. So yes, for them speaking up, but they need to have the protection of us first to be able to know that they are safe to use their voice. Now, I think can't see that one. A few comments, so I might just go through them as we go. Otherwise, we get quite a lot of comments, and some people we miss out on some really good ones. So, if young girls speak out, where are we? If young girls speak out, especially at school, they get bullied by other students, and that's a really big thing. And I'll be talking about that. What happened at Pride Week last year. And yes, you're so correct. And that's why we don't want to put them in that position either. We have to set things up where they're not going to be bullied. Otherwise, we're sending them out into the war. And that's just not appropriate at all for them. Mental injury is huge. Linda, ASEAN, I have my Nike sports top all ready to burn. I'll send you the video when I'm done. Oh, cool. Thanks, Linda. We're all desperate to see that, I'm sure. It'll be fun. Jill, yes, Charmaine, it needs to be stopped.
We need to burn our Adidas stuff now as well. Sorry. Did you see Adidas has now got a male model promoting women's swimwear? It's just,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, can I actually vomit? No, I'm okay, Jill, teenage girls are saying they can't say anything at high school as it is not safe. There you go. There you go. I mean, they say teachers are pushing the trans agenda, and they get bullied by other teenagers if they speak out. This is real stuff. This is why we have to do the protecting first. Thanks, Jill. Charmaine, I reject all self-identifying. Yeah, don't we all? Thanks, Charmaine. Great to see you here each week. Linda, that's right, Jill. I think the girls are bullied into submission. Yeah. So, Katrina, was it possible to speak to any female council officers? Yes. So, Katrina, let's get back to that, and if you can address that question.
In the meeting, there was the head of recreation, and his name is Nigel Cox, and there was the younger woman who did that.
It wasn't me.
And there was the younger woman who was actually, she was the one responsible for getting this session up and running. And she's no longer there. And there was another woman who I got the impression was like a legal advisor or something. She was there, and she was keeping close tabs on what we were saying to make sure that we stayed within the parameters that they wanted and didn't go sort of anywhere that they didn't want to go to. So
I just interject, Katrina. That was actually their lawyer. Yeah, I do remember. She was a lawyer, was she?
Yeah, right. She was. Yeah. So anyway, Jenny Jordan was fully on board with the whole trans thing. What can I say? Completely bought into it. When we said to her, "Are you aware that like about 85% of men who say they're women retain all their male genitalia?" And she started on the track of, "Well, I know there's a long waiting list for surgery," and that's just completely irrelevant because most men keep their male genitalia because they want to. And so they were the two women who were present. As I said, they were not open or anything like that. They were so captured. They were all so captured. You could hear the chains rattling. They absolutely were prisoners of this. And that's how we've found. I think, and that's how the Invercargill people have found their councillors as well, their city council as well. And what was this is something really interesting, is that during the consultation process, because I did an Official Information Act request, I could see that the subject of having men in the women's session was not raised. It was discussed, but it wasn't. There was no sort of nothing. No, there was no conclusion about it. It was just like, what shall we talk about this? What shall we do? And then I could see that they had a consultation with Qtopia, which is Christchurch's neo-rainbow organisation. And I use the word neo-rainbow because I do not think the rainbow now is anything like the rainbow that used to be. And it's basically TQIA++. And after that consultation with Qtopia, it was suddenly like men who say they're women are going to be included in the session. It was really obvious that that's what happened. Now, I just want to say something here. It's come to light just recently that the healthcare lead at Qtopia is a transgender person, a man who says he's a woman, by the name of Jennifer Shields. Now, somebody has posed a question, and I won't say who, it's a woman, has posed a question that reads like this. I wonder if this is the same Jennifer Shields from about 8 years ago who said they hoped I was raped with a chainsaw. Now, can you imagine anyone else in any other organisation getting away with saying that, something like that? No background check, obviously, and then getting into a position like healthcare lead in an organisation. So that's Qtopia are basically driving this with the Christchurch City Council. Women, I don't think any woman, apart from the women's groups like Ministry for Women, National Council for Women, who are all on board with it as well, no women are getting a look in, a talk. I mean, we did have a meeting, as I said, but it was really they weren't going to budge on their stance. It was just box ticking, really. But yeah, it's all Qtopia driven in the Christchurch City Council in the swimming pool, and I think we'll find that in most councils now, it's basically anything about anything to do with sort of like public spaces is Neo Rainbow Group driven.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Nicole just said, does their identity as a woman override our identity as victims of sexual assault?
Yes. Yes,
yeah,
it does.
some pretty serious questions that should be addressed.
Yeah, because they've changed the meaning of the word woman to be, they've taken the liberty of changing the meaning of the word woman to mean anyone who says they are. And I mean, I have it in writing, you know, anyone who identifies as a woman is one. And so therefore, a man who says he's a woman cannot sort of be uncomfortable to other women at all because he's a woman. That's the circular thinking.
Yeah, and although this is a really serious topic, none of us want to make light of it. However, I just noticed Cameron's comment, and this goes to show the nonsensical, you know, if you look at it, he wants to identify as tax exempt. The IRD wouldn't believe him, double standards. And I think about that. I mean, you know, we're joking, of course, but I think about that I had a meeting recently with a parent, and her child is in a high school, boys' high school. They share the library with the female school next door, and there's a female student who is identifying as a cat. Now, I'm sure we've all heard this, but the thing is, we've heard about a lot of this stuff. This is here in Christchurch. We've got children in school identifying as cats. So do you see what this has opened? You know, this is not about being inclusive. It's not about diversity. It's about teaching children.
Sorry, is that the one where the teacher actually provided a bowl of milk for the child?
Well, there might be a few cats in New Zealand schools by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
You know, how is any intelligent, educated teacher actually coping with this? And all the other adults around, what are you thinking? What, you know, I need to move on, or I'm going to say something that
That's terribly delusional, I'm afraid.
Later. And so we've got Sherry, heaven forbid that you step out of the parameters. Yeah. Why can't, so Rhonda's got a really good suggestion here, and I was thinking about doing something like this, Rhonda. Why can't some of the women at the centre all go together into the male changing rooms and change there? They can all identify as women and see how fast the council get upset about it. Sorry, men. And look, I'm glad you said sorry, men. Sorry as men. Not sure. Oh, yeah, as men. What a horrific thing to say. Oh, yeah, that was back with what you said about that guy, the guy who's now identifying. There's something here.
I'll just jump in here. Right, yes, I'll answer that. I'll just jump in here, Helen, and we'll come back to this in what you said in a minute. You raised a really pertinent point before about if somebody changes their names, like this Jennifer Shields, how can you do a complete background check on them? But anyway, gay men and bisexual people. Yeah. I mean, there are so many people who want to LGBs who do want to absolutely divorce themselves from the TQIA++. They have nothing in common at all. And the weird thing is, of course, they call themselves, you know, like the councils refer to LGBTQIA++ or the rainbow community and things like that. And that includes lesbians. And they may not be at all comfortable having men in the changing room with them, or the woman-only swim session, which the council sort of, you know, has goes to great lengths on their website to explain all the reasons why women may want a session for themselves, you know. And let me read it out. There is a range of reasons women may choose to come to this session, including increased privacy and sense of safety, greater confidence in a woman-only environment, to spend social time with female friends and family because of religious and cultural beliefs, or to train with their female sports team. So they've got that on their website. And then in the next breath, they say that anyone who identifies as a woman is one.
It's utter hypocrisy, isn't it? Right there in your face, you know. Whoever wrote that first bit, that bit that you just read out, obviously had some idea of what our particular needs are as women, and wrote on, and then they turn around and pull the wool out from underneath by saying anyone can identify as a woman.
Yeah. And they rattle on a bit about providing an equitable service. Now, people may recognise some of these buzzwords that have been thrown around now, and equitable is one of them. So it's all about providing an equitable service. But somehow or another, women just don't get a look in. It's all, as I said, it's all rainbow time.
It's not equitable when you're being run roughshod over the larger part of the community who are using that particular room. For goodness sake.
And they and one of their favourites, of course, is, oh, we haven't had any complaints. I know that. And a complaint has to be, of course, made about something specific, you know, and like the fact that a man has inappropriately touched them or something like that, you know, not just that he's there because he's identifying as a woman. Now, the thing too, of course, is if that a council or any organisation, any service provider has a policy that says that a woman is anyone who identifies as one, then there is nowhere for a woman to make a complaint about a man who's making her feel uncomfortable in that space if he's identifying as a woman. There is just no place to make a complaint like that. So it's a really dishonest thing to say. We've had no complaints, and there's also I think one of the other favourite ones is that there's no evidence or proof. But as we know, nobody in any of the countries where they've implemented sex self-ID, either officially or it's just by sort of de facto, you know, sort of creeped into society, there's no official organisation collecting data from women about the impacts of this on them, from women or girls. So to say that there's no evidence as well, that's another dishonest thing to say, because our own Minister for Women, Jan Tinetti, I don't really know. I mean, to me, I think she pulled a swift one when we're talking about sex. She was talking about sex self-ID, and she made it sound as though there was going to be some sort of evidence gathering, or what did she call it? At the end of 5 years, there would be sort of they would look at it and ascertain to see how it was working. But then I later discovered that all they were going to look at was the processes and see if they were working, not the actual sort of whether it was working in, you know, for women, or there were impacts, or there was anything negative going on, nothing like that. So there's the no evidence and the no complaints are really red herrings, because there are no places to provide evidence and there's no place to make a complaint.
Well, I guess one of the questions is, what are the solutions for us to that? You know, if there's no place to put in a complaint, what are the strategies can we come up with as a group of women that we can keep ourselves safe, and also especially our girls. Does it mean that we shouldn't go to the pool anymore or get changed at home? Or
Exactly. Yeah. All these things that women are now having to sort of do. And these are a lot of these are incremental subtractions. Like a little bit at a time, a little bit here, and there, until next thing you know, is that you're actually doing quite a lot of things that you didn't have to do once because you had all these rights in place. And it's really, really hard to fight that incremental sort of reduction or taking away of your rights, because you kind of just do these little adjustments as you go when it happens. And it can be in. So it's quite difficult. I mean, obviously something needs to be done, but it's a very difficult thing because of the fact that then, like women and men have to actually sort of front up. And as you see, and it's not just the kids at school who are afraid to, it's men and women everywhere who are afraid to, because of the fact that it might mean something to them in the workplace or whatever. Banking on women being obedient to this travesty. Well, it is. It's they are banking on it, but it's also because we don't have sort of groups or a big organisation, as I said, where men and women are prepared to front up, to be public, to show their faces, and that sort of thing.
I think that it's clear that people are objecting to it, because there's been meetings in Invercargill and Christchurch, and they're just not listening. They're bullying women all over the country.
Well, that's actually a good point, because I think, as I mentioned before, actually presenting a good case to them is just having no effect at all.
Exactly.
So I'll add up Kerry's comment then. I have an opinion that I think most will disagree with. Rational arguments are pointless, which is what we're just talking about. So I believe the only way is to disengage from any activity that places a woman in a potentially violating situation. Kerry, which is why we're online now. This would spread the effort over the entire community rather than have a small minority courageously speaking out. Yeah, so this is kind of what we are starting with this process, this movement. But what you are saying there, and I think Katrina alluded to it before as well, and even the girls in the clip at the beginning, they were told that, what were they told? Go somewhere else if they feel uncomfortable. Now, how logical is it for, say, for example, think of the local pool that you know, and you're in there, you feel uncomfortable, and you're being told by the manager of the pool, well, there's the cubicles that you can go to. Well, most of the women are going to feel uncomfortable. So how logical is it that we're doing all of this, that we're expecting women and girls to go and use a cubicle for one confused male who's in there? I don't get that. I mean, we're having to completely change the way that we would act and behave for a male.
Yeah.
How does that? Yeah. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So I like Kerry's idea where we actually just stop using the services. It's back to that boycotting kind of situation, isn't it? We get the woman together and go, okay, then we're not using more.
And it's really unfair.
Well, I think one of the issues is that, if enough people would stand up and stand together and do boycott these places and put enough pressure on, right? That's where the movement has to go. It can't be that us women are now just never going to go to the pool anymore, or stop playing sports just because the males are trying to take over. We got to bring enough of these women to the point where they do want to stand up, and where there's also the men. There's also men out there that think that this is absolutely ridiculous. They don't want males in the change room with their daughters or with their women or, with their mothers. And I think really where the movement has to go is that enough of the people are actually standing up and speaking out and saying, no, enough is enough now. And there was it in Australia where these people went and protested at that council meeting for the drag queen story hour? And it was such a huge amount of people that turned up, and eventually it was cancelled. So I do believe when we stand up en masse, as that person suggested before, I do think that we have a chance to turn that around.
And we do need to have, like, I mean, that is really good. We just need to have that person or those people who are prepared to organise that, liaise with it, put the time and the effort and whatever, and to do that, and and be the leader or leaders. And it's the coordination. That's all it takes, is the coordination. I think a lot of people would step up if the coordination was there.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge in New Zealand, because we seem to prefer just to keep our,
Yeah, we're not very feisty here. I haven't been.
No, we're all about live and let live, and which is great. But when it comes to issues of safety for our children and safety for women, I think it's we actually got to find some fight to, because these people, we know that this is a top-down driven agenda. It is nothing to do with what's really some child having gender issues. It's these laws, these things that are being pushed from government. It's not about the general Joe public. This is only a minority group, but they've gotten themselves into positions of power that is actually now outworking in our nation in a way that is actually totally unacceptable. And New Zealanders actually need to find some fight.
Yeah, I think. I mean, one of the things perhaps we just need to go back to gathering around the kitchen table, so to speak. Online is great, but for grassroots, to get a grassroots organisation off the ground or whatever, maybe people have to do things how they used to do them. Is go to people's places or whatever, sit around the table, whatever, in the lounge, talk it out.
New Zealand's too sleepy. Yeah, she's right.
However, going back to those young girls in that clip, it's clear that in countries overseas, this is quite a big thing, and it's New Zealand. We're only just starting to address this. Do we want to wait for New Zealand to get like these other countries before we actually start standing up and standing up for our children?
Yeah.
I think a couple of weeks ago, somebody commented on the page is that they are going to ask all their local candidates where they stand on these issues. And I think with the upcoming elections, that might be a strategy that if all of us, keep asking those questions, so that eventually we will know where these, wannabe elected people are standing, and so that we can make an informed decision.
Oh, and just to add to that as well, ASEAN, it's all very well to ask them and them to say, oh, yes, no, we oppose it. Well, what are they doing? We need to see action, okay? Don't just listen to them say, yeah, that's going to be one of our policies. Well, what are they actually, ask them, what are they doing about the change? What are they doing to stand up?
Yeah, it's pretty vital to actually, stand up. I mean, I know that there's women who would get out there with signs at the pool and stand around there, but they don't want to do it with just two or three of them. They want they a reasonable contingent out there. And to be honest, like as I said, I know a lot of women and men are afraid to be seen, but wear a wig. Wear a mask, or either a face mask there or eye mask, or even a full face mask. Disguise yourself. Get out there and do it. If that's what you're afraid of, is like it's been recognised while you're doing it.
Yeah, I think some good questions to Jan Taniti, our Women's Minister, would be really helpful right now as well. So I don't see Jen doing a lot in the women's space. She's certainly not doing.
She's captured. She's fully captured. Absolutely. Yeah. She's not a friend of ours at all. And I think, talking to like talking to politicians and councillors and asking them the questions about their stance and everything like that is good. And I think it's just a question of like hounding them, because to be honest, it's a bit useless asking them unless it's done en masse, like constantly en masse, like make them absolutely fed up with you. So.
Yeah, and this comment here goes to show what you're kind of talking about, though. It's like I've asked many politicians where they stand. The only politician who stood up for women was Simon O'Connor. They all passed the self-ID legislation, though. Now, that's a good point she's made, because there might be one or two candidates or MPs in a party that do the right thing. But if that whole party are not doing it, if the leadership are not, then that party's useless. Completely useless. So you go to a party where the leaders are actually making the noise and doing the right things.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, like how many politicians and actually in government or in parliament actually said anything about the violence against women after the Let Women Speak rally in Auckland. I mean, obviously you did, Helen, but I'm talking about the politicians actually in Parliament. Not one. And I did hear ACT say something, but it was more to the point about people should be allowed to stand up and speak freely. It wasn't about the violence.
And then you had the Greens Party, who are completely all for the trans, being able to do what they like, basically. So we've got, I know that you mentioned the lady down in Invercargill and their, sorry, I'm just trying to find an article. Might not be able to find it now, but there was an article written about what happened in Invercargill, and I know that they were talking about the council are not going to address it as a wellbeing issue anymore. They made a comment. Trying to find it. They made a comment regarding the fact that so many. Oh, here, I found it. Okay. So the council had not received any formal complaints regarding males in the female change rooms at Splash Palace, but the concerns raised by members of the public were not taken lightly. Earlier this month, Mr. Day said if the council's review of health and safety indicated necessity in reconfiguring pool change rooms, it may be considered as part of the long-term plan 24 to 34. Gosh. But what I found really interesting about this article that was written by Otago Daily Times, at the end of it, this is the statement. They said, earlier this month, independent research group, the Disinformation Project, published a paper indicating hatred towards transgender people in New Zealand had risen this year. Now, why on earth is this in the same article where people had concerns about the changing rooms? Do you see what they're doing here?
This is the thing. Where is the evidence of that? Because they put all these figures out there saying, the abuse has increased, blah blah blah. I don't know anybody who is aggressive and abusive like what we saw at Albert Park, and yet, oh no, we're just supposed to sit back and take it, I'm just like amazed that, these people that sit back and say, oh, the abuse against trans has increased, so we need to accommodate them more. It's absolute rubbish.
They very much they say that, but one of the things they do come out, of course, is say that there's more likely to be abuse against trans people than women when they're talking about changing rooms. But
rubbish.
Where's the evidence? Where
exactly.
Is the evidence, that this happens? And I think there's two other things here too. Is like, how many bodies are needed? What's the body count required before it's actually okay for a woman to have their single-sex spaces again? And the other thing too is they all seem to want an incident to happen or a number of incidents to happen before they actually sort of will consider that women should have single-sex spaces again, but the whole idea of having a single-sex space is so that there are no incidents ever happen.
That's
And, you know,
right.
and no woman should ever have to go into a woman-only space or a female space wondering what kind of man might be in there today.
Mm.
That's the whole point of
Yeah.
having a single-sex space.
Do we ever hear of women who are going into males' changing rooms identifying as males? I mean, you know, is that such a thing? It makes you wonder why males feel the need to, pop in
Well,
there.
I do know one went in. I do know of one incident where that was the case, and the guys just really rounded on it and said, "Get out, get out, get out." So, you know, it's just
Interesting.
they hated it just as much as we hate the
Yeah, I mean, both men and women, you know, there are just times when we want that single sex space. I mean, you know, it's like you walk in there and it's a bit like a sanctuary, you know, it's hard to hard to explain, but you walk into that space and it's safety and sanctuary, and you know, and it's like that for men as well and women, you know,
Absolutely.
and you know,
it's a personal. It's your body is a personal. It's privacy, right? And to have a person of opposite sex come in while you're in that room changing, it just I
disturbing.
I did share a while ago on here, I think it was, where as a teacher I've taken many classrooms to swimming, you know, public swimming pools, and while we have the girls going into the girls' changing rooms, it's fine for me as a teacher to go in there and check on them and to hurry them on. But quite the opposite for the boys who go into the boys' changing rooms. Obviously, I couldn't just walk in and hurry them on. So I would stand outside, directly outside the males' changing. And, you know, I can recall where I've kind of tried to raise my voice and get the boys to hurry on, where males have come out who've gone there, you know, to use the public swimming, and they've come out very cross that I'm standing so close to their space, right? It's, you know, it's no different for males.
Well, the good thing, Helen, you can now identify as a male teacher and you can go and hurry those boys up as well.
Okay, all right. I'll do my best. No, I'm actually not teaching, so, but yeah, you're so right. Or a cat. What about a cat?
Yeah, but you raised an interesting point before about, I think I alluded to it, about people who change their names and soon, you know, the sex on the birth certificate. What kind of background checks can you do on people like that? You know, like can a background check by an organisation be done on somebody, you know, delving into what their name used to be, what their sex used to be, or anything like that? You know, it's really...
Well, yeah, you talked about Jennifer. I mean, who was Jennifer before he identified as Jennifer? Who was he? And like, for example, a lot of those males overseas who have done some hideous crimes then start to identify as a woman. And so they're put in a woman's prison. And, you know, if they've taken on that new name, new identity, nobody is allowed to ask questions. And all that history of what they've actually done in the past, you know, they could be fiddling with children. They could have a record on that. And yet none of that's going to be known. It's just horrific. So maybe that's somewhere where the law needs to, you know, put some kind of something in place, surely. Maybe that's something we can be asking.
Perhaps, yes, I'm not sure, but I mean, I'll cover this next week, and when I'm talking about sex self-ID, but just briefly here, it has been decided that a person can change the sex on their birth certificate unlimited number of times.
Wow, just go back and forward. So Danielle said, actually, background checks in recruitment, how can they fact check people, i.e. working in education? Yeah. You know, all those police checks that we have had in the past are kind of like just shoved aside, really, aren't they now? Maya, jokes aside, I was wondering if a group of women identified as male, yeah, we talked about that, maybe with handouts explaining why, get men to realise and speak out more for us too. Yep. There was a school in the US where kids arrived and found the boys' urinals taped over, so the whole school walked out. Males take no shit. Yeah, and it's about time that women also take no shit. We need to stand up and be counted, just like the high school girls are having to push back against trans males in their locker rooms. We really should do it. So next week, you're right, next week we're very fortunate that Katrina is coming back and talking about the self-ID, which will help. Where are we? Somebody said, Jono, yes, sure. How many women in major roles in the National Party? I'm not sure what is that applicable to. I mean, how many women in major roles in the National Party? Does it matter? Sorry, I'm not. I don't know. We're not worried about how many.
Sure, that means either. So, yeah. I mean, the thing of course, it always starts. It always starts small. Like people sort of, there are these women who sort of say, "Oh, I don't care about these." If a man comes into the change room, he says there's a woman, that. But the thing is that those women, okay, that's fine. There's a range of emotions there, from complete nonchalance to extreme distress. If a man does come into a woman's change room, or anywhere where it's just women only, and though no woman, however she feels, no woman has the right to give away that right to a single-sex space for other women just because she might feel quite nonchalant about having a man in the space.
Good.
So, and as I said, it starts with a little incrementally, a little bit at a time like that. I'm fine, and because like people might know a lot of nice trans people, and they think, oh well, what's the harm in that?
Well, you're right, and probably a majority of these trans people wouldn't do anything. But is that the point here? Is it the point that women should be able to have the dignity of undressing? Where
exactly right, Helen. The point is about women, not about the trans people.
That's it. And Bronnie, I don't know if you actually did address the issue around the trauma, and a lot of these women who choose, for example, to go to a women's only gym or women's swimming only day is because some of them have faced. I mean, we've talked about the high rate of domestic violence for women, and so you've got that plus childhood abuse, that kind of trauma. Did you address that, Bronnie, or did you want to say anything about that before we finish up?
Well, just that when women have been sexually abused, it's recognised that you're not supposed to get them to repeat their story, because you're re-traumatizing them every time they go through the story. So with the whole, exposing a woman who's been abused to male genitalia, it is a major trigger for anyone who's been abused, let alone young girls who've never seen that sort of thing before anyway. It's just, highly irresponsible of these school boards and the councils to just railroad women into these situations where they can be re-traumatized and set them back in their healing process. And it's just, in my view, incredibly negligent, and it needs to be stopped.
I don't know if that laugh that just came on was for that point, but if it was, I would just like to confirm and reiterate your point. When a child, young girl or boy, sees an adult stranger's penis, or male genitalia, if you prefer it to be called like that, it is traumatic for a child, and it can take a lifetime for them to overcome that kind of trauma. And, if that was a laugh around that kind of disgusts me, because no child should have to see somebody else's penis. Thank you very much. But I could be wrong, and it might not have been a laugh for that. So, Jono, thanks for clarifying as well that you were asking because somebody else had said that suggested a change of government would help. Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, so next week we have Katrina back with us talking about sex self-ID. And the week after, I've got a wee treat because I'm interviewing a 15-year-old high school student. And so his recording, I'll be playing that. So we'll have some student voices in a couple of weeks talking about how they're feeling about all this rainbow stuff forced on them in school. And that leads us in quite nicely to Pride Week. So that should help some of you out there to deal with what's coming. Thank you, ladies. It's been a pleasure to have you all on the show tonight. And thank you especially to the audience out there for your comments and your questions. I'm just going to finish off with this one from Carol, and then we're going to say good night. Here we go. I did a PhD in the UK on sexual abuse, and one of the sections included triggers. The male penis was one of them. There you go.
Definitely.
So, yeah, sorry guys, but I'm sure that's okay where it belongs, but not where it shouldn't.
Exactly.
So that was really okay. Yeah, cool to see you all tonight, and we'll see you all next week when we tune in. So good night, everyone.
Good
Bye.
night.
Cool. Good night. Kumari.